We waste no time with our next guest. If you follow the NFL, then you know who he is, and you probably read a lot of his work over the years. We go out to the HR&P guest line right now. We bring on the great Peter King from NBC Sports. Peter, it's Jake, BK, and Cody. Thanks so much for squeezing us in and taking a few minutes out of your day to join the show.
No problem. Great to be on with you guys. How are you?
Fantastic, Peter. So I want to start, obviously, with the big story that's been following the Texans for months, and obviously it's become a huge NFL story as well, and that's the latest with any potential Deshaun Watson trade. As we see there right now, less than a week from the trade deadline, what does your gut tell you? Do you think Deshaun Watson actually gets traded, or is this something that carries over into the offseason?
I don't have a great feel for it, honestly, Jake. I just feel like I keep thinking that the Dolphins are going to come to their senses and say, are we seriously going to trade whatever it is, 3 ones, for a guy who we don't know how much he's going to be able to play this year? We're not even sure how much he's going to play next year. And we also don't know if he's going to be found criminally responsible for any of these accusations that have been have basically tarnished his reputation. And so I keep thinking to myself, I just can't believe that a general manager would do this. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Having said that, I trust John McClain. I trust a lot of the reporters who are on the case. And so it looks like he might get traded to Miami. We'll see. I have zero inside information on it other than just, shaking my head about it, I guess.
Peter, are you surprised that Deshaun Watson isn't on the commissioner's exempt list? And do you think there's anything that could change that outside of a criminal charge going Deshaun Watson's way?
Well, I mean, Roger Goodell obviously has made the point that commissioner's exempt list is used. I'm putting words in his mouth because he didn't say these exact words, but the commissioner's exempt list in the past has been used for people who have been charged with crimes. And that, in this case, is not Deshaun Watson. So he might be soon. Who knows? I don't know what's going to happen with this case. I think none of us really know. But having said that, I think that one of the other easy parts to look at in this case is that whether he goes on the commissioner's exempt list or not, and if the league doesn't want to put him on this list, common sense tells you that really isn't going to stop people wherever he's traded when he takes the field. I mean, look, I have no idea what fans will do. None, zero. I wouldn't hazard a guess. But it wouldn't surprise me to see protests, and perhaps major protests, at if he gets traded to Miami and he's going to play at Hard Rock Stadium. For women's groups to come out and say, what in the heck is going on here, and why is our football team, with the Lord Dan Marino legacy, giving a job to a guy who has been accused by women of treating them very disrespectfully and perhaps criminally. So we'll see. But I as far as why the league hasn't done it, the league could do it. I find it hard to believe that the league is going to sit idly by and let him play if he goes to another team, but that's the inference that I'm hearing from people who should know in the league.
Peter, you've mentioned some of the conversations and the perception that could pop up from a Deshaun Watson situation. Do you get any sense that maybe the Houston Texans have grown tired of being associated with him and maybe want to just put this on someone else's ledger and let someone else deal with the off-the-field conversation around this quarterback and try to distance themselves when they've had a rough string of public perception for the better part of a year and a half?
I'm sure they want to get rid of Deshaun Watson. Of course they do. They're telling him to stay away. They're paying him millions of dollars to stay away. Of course they want it to be somebody else's headache. But just because you want it to be somebody else's headache, my feeling is, why would you make a trade for less than you probably could get next March? You're not getting anything that's going to help you for the rest of this year. So why wouldn't you wait until let's just say for the sake of argument, that Aaron Rodgers either goes back to Green Bay or he gets traded to Denver. Let's just say. I'm making this up. All right, so now there are going to be 2 or 3 teams that will be very hot after Deshaun Watson. I would think Philadelphia would be one. I would think Carolina would be one. And I think Miami would be one. Why, oh why, won't you wait 4 months to let the bidding begin? That's the other part. And I understand that they want to be done with it. I get it. But if they make a below market trade, and again, look, I don't know what Nick Caserio is going to do, but I would think it would be worth it to continue to have the headache of Deshaun Watson around your, hanging over your head, if it's going to mean that you'll get 30% more in value if you wait 4 months to make a trade.
Peter King joining us here on the Wheelhouse, talking to Peter, of course, Football Morning in America column, NBC Sports. Peter, when you look at the return for any Deshaun Watson trade, if they do decide to wait until the offseason, they don't make any deal right now, what would you consider a great return for the Texans in any Deshaun trade?
Well, you'd in order to know that, you'd first have to know, is he free and clear of all legal obligations? Has he made a global settlement, perhaps with the women who have accused him of wrongdoing? So it's hard to know that until he's free and clear. Now, if he's free and clear, I think he's very much worth 3 1s and 2 2s, and maybe a player of some kind. But that's the other thing to think about. I have no idea. Does Nick Caserio want Tua Tagovailoa, or has he seen enough to know that, like when you drive a new car out of the lot, all of a sudden, just because Tua is played by the time that a trade would happen in the off season, say a year and a half, his value would have already been lessened significantly. So I'm not even sure he's worth 1 anymore. Unless he plays great the rest of this year. So that's one problem. I think the other issue in knowing what his value would be is how many teams would be involved. And that's what I mean by, if Aaron Rodgers decides to stay in Green Bay, look at all the teams that could be involved with the college quarterbacking class turning what appears to be disappointing this year. How do you know right now who's going to be available? How much value a great college quarterback is going to be? And if the market is down, all of a sudden, then the Deshaun Watson derby could even be richer than what we think right now. So there's just a lot of things we don't know right now. I mean, a year ago, no one in their right mind had any idea that Zach Wilson was going to be the second pick in the draft. So a lot of things can happen in the last 2+ months of the college season.
No doubt about that. Peter, I want to ask you a national NFL question here. The AFC appears to be wide open. I was reading your Football Morning in America column the other day. You wrote a lot about the Cincinnati Bengals, who are currently the 1 seed in the AFC. The preseason favorite in that conference was Kansas City, and they're 3-4. Does it feel like that conference is as wide open as it's been in a long time?
The weird thing about the AFC is that there's not a single team in the AFC that has got 0 or 1 loss. And when you're only through 7 weeks and your best team has a record that ends in a 2, that's kind of weird. So I think it's hard to know what the best team is right now. I'd probably say Buffalo, but if you wanted to say Tennessee or even the Chargers or Vegas, if you remain convinced that Baltimore just had a blip on the radar with the Bengals the other day, I just don't know. I don't know who the best team in the AFC is, and I'm awful glad the season's not ending right now because I would have no idea. I think any one of 7 teams probably could win the AFC, and the 7th might be Kansas City, and that would be anticipating they would come out of their funk. But it's so much easier, not that it's easier to predict who's better or who's the best team in the NFC, but to me, the vast power, the vast amount of power in the NFL this year is in the NFC, at least through 7 weeks.
Peter, the column's called Football Morning in America, but anybody who's ever read it knows you know a little bit about baseball. What do you think of the World Series so far? We're only 1 game in, but we're panicked a little bit here in Houston. You know, it's a lose game, one of the World Series. You kind of freak out a little bit. What do you think about this matchup?
Well, I mean, after the Red Sox series, I said, you know, the ironic thing about the fans who were, you know, who everywhere boo the Astros, and I guess I don't blame them, but the ironic thing about booing the Astros is that their 4 most important players in the ALCS, 2 pitchers, 2 hitters, were guys who were not on the team in 2017. And I don't know that those guys have ever met, you know, Alex Cora, or I don't think they have much institutional knowledge unless they've read about it. Because I doubt that Carlos Correa is sitting down and telling Yordan Alvarez, "Hey, here's what happened back 4 years ago." You know, so that I mean, I look at them and I'm really, really impressed. I just think their depth is really, really so good right now. But, you know, at the end of the season, it doesn't really matter what you've done the whole year. It matters what you've done in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Who gets hot at the end of the year? For a while, in the middle of the ALCS, I thought it was going to be Boston. But then they stopped hitting. And now you look at this and you say, wow, Atlanta's batting Dansby Swanson 9th. And for a while, for I'd say 6 weeks this year, he was their most reliable hitter. So they've got really good depth too, depth of talent and depth of hitting. I hate to wimp out on it, but in an ideal world, I would think Houston would win because, I mean, look, I'd walk Yordan Alvarez every time he came to the plate. I'm not pitching to that guy. He's David Ortiz and Babe Ruth. He's crazy right now. But I don't have a great feel other than to say that I really like Houston exiting that series, and so we'll see what happens.
Peter, before we let you go, I've always wanted to ask you this. So there was a congressman for a very long time named Peter King. Did you guys ever get confused by people on Twitter? Maybe someone tweeting you, complaints about something going on at, in Peter King's, district, but the tweet was sent to you? What was that dynamic like?
It happens all the time. It happened a lot maybe 3 and 4 years ago when he was kind of at the height of his power. But the funniest thing happened to me going through LaGuardia Airport in New York in the security line one day, where, I go through the security line and I show my ID to the guy at TSA, and he looks up at me and he says, "Pleasure to meet you, Congressman." And I said, thank you. I mean, what do you want? I'm not going to sit there and explain I'm not Peter King. I am Peter King, But anyway, no, I've never met the guy. But I always wonder if he occasionally gets asked, "Hey, who do you like in the Packers-Cardinals game this week?" I don't know.
He's Peter King, the football writer, the guy that you read on the Football Morning in America column each and every week. Of course, you also see him on NBC Sports as well. Peter, thanks so much for taking the time. Been wanting to get you on for a long time. Appreciate you making a few minutes for us today, and we look forward to hopefully getting you on again down the line. Thanks again.
Sounds good, guys. Take care, huh?
Peter King joining us there on the HRNP guest line. Good stuff there from someone that is as locked into the NFL as anyone.